Okay, my name's Mitch. I'm from Johnson Power Systems, and I'm going to give you a once-over on the engine and the operational procedures, and then Eddie will explain the breaker and some of the things in the breaker cabinet. Basically, I'm going to give you the specs on the engines. It's a Caterpillar 3516. It is 2000 kW, 12 kV, and it's 102 amps maximum. What I want to do is point out some of the features on this side first, but before we get that, I just want to get into, if you can turn to page, I think it says page 9 in the bottom, it kind of looks like this, the technical data. The fuel tank's 1,200 gallons, and I did a calculation based on load, and I'm not sure what our load was, and actually if we've tested totally, I know we've done several things, but if we were at 100% load, you're about 138, 139 gallons an hour, so you have 8+ hours of fuel. At 75% load, you're at about 107, 108 gallons an hour. You have 11+ hours of fuel. And at 50% load, you had about 78 gallons an hour, and that's 15+ hours. Also on that sheet, you'll see the capacities. The coolant capacity of the engine itself is about 61.662 gallons, and the radiator is about 63, 64 gallons. So between the two, you got 125 gallons. And on the oil, I know they don't show it here. Oh, there it is. Oil system, 106 gallons. So that's the fluid capacities of the unit. A lot of fluid. Gary knows about those kind of things. What I want to do, like I said, is point out some of the things on this side of the engine, then we'll go over the other side. Up on the right-hand corner of the radiator, and Gary, you're going to have to climb up to see it there, up above that cage, there is a indicator. And it's right now it's about halfway up on an indicator, which is good. At the bottom of that tank, there's a sensor that'll sense if our coolant's down to that level and give us a shutdown, the low coolant level. So just so you know where that's at. Actually, if you guys want to come in a little closer, it's fine if, you know, as long as we're catching sound here. Up on your oil and lube filters, or I'm sorry, fuel filters are up on the front of the engine here, and up above that is a priming, hand priming pump, and we kind of showed Gary that and Tom earlier. On top is the fuel filters. On the bottom of that is lube filters, and then these are fuel water separators. So they're going to catch the fuel first coming up off the tank, catch any water, and those are also drainable. And there's an element in there that can be changed. Also on this side we have the oil check, which is the tube here at the bottom, with the ring handle on it. And we have the oil fill, which is right here on this side. So, you know, normally I think our distance is about probably 15-20 gallons between full and add, and we should be fine, but if you had to add, that's where you would do that. Also on this side you have you have two air cleaners, and you can see on this side we've got the restriction gauge. If that starts to get into the red, it'll pop for restriction, and it's time to change out the air cleaners. Also, you can see on the back of the generator there's a VIN number. Caterpillar goes by the last 8 digits starting from the right to the left, so if you grab those 8 last digits, or just call and say it's Inland Empire's new unit, and we'll know over at the compost, we'll know, but that's where you actually find that information. On the engine also, you can see there's a sticker here, and it's also got information on, that's the engine serial number. On the unit, you're going to have 3 serial numbers. You have the engine serial number, the generator actually has its own serial number, which is on that plate, and then the unit serial number. And we go by the unit serial number because that references everything else, and in this case, it's a SBJ 01017. And so that's what we go by, is that 8-digit. Also on this side, you have all the fuel things that go with the fuel system. You have a little pop gauge here that shows you that we're full, and actually we're so full that we're triggering a high fuel level. It got a little overfilled and we haven't run enough to get it down below that. And also we'll see an annunciation on the panel for that right now that's lit. Once that fuel burns down below that, that switch will open and it'll turn that light on. So, you know, don't be panicked by that on the other side when you see that. The oil or the fuel fill is here. You've got a low fuel level switch, again the high level switch, and there's also a high level switch. I think that's what we're on right now, probably the high. And is there a rupture basin also?
Yeah, there's a fuel leak alarm as well.
Fuel leak alarm as well. So if anything was to leak out into this containment, it'll enunciate that as well. Any questions on this side? I know that was kind of quick, but really most of the meat of the machine's on the other side. Any questions? Okay, we'll go to the other side of the machine.
Well, just how often?
Yeah.
How often do you change the oil and service the engine?
Well, that's a good question. With Caterpillar's new directive to us is because of trying to go green and so on. What we would do in this case is that the first year we would change all the filters because that's normal, and then we would sample the oil. And if the oil came back that it needs change, then you change it. Otherwise, you go to the second year, and in any case, by the third year, you must change it. So that makes record keeping even more so. But what we're trying to do is help the environment. We don't want to dump huge amounts of oil in the oil, reserve people that collect the used oil if we can help it. And with a standby set, these especially, they've been extended to all the 500 hours. And with a standby set, it will take 10 or 15 years to get 500 hours. So it's not the oil itself that's degraded, it's the time on the oil. With the oil itself, we can run forever if it can keep up, but it starts losing its properties. And so for sure the 3-year mark, we have to change it. But again, for this first year, Gary can take a sample, change the filters, and go from there. Yeah. And then for the large quantities, that's what we're doing.
I noticed there's a valve on the fuel fill, and right there.
Show me this?
No, this valve.
Oh.
And does that prevent it from fueling at a certain time, or how is that valve open or close, or what's that for?
Nathan?
That valve closes when it reaches the high fuel level.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
So what happens is it'll shut the valve off and prevent any further filling.
All right, any more questions? Those are good questions, by the way. Okay, we'll go over to the other side.
We're on.
Okay, we're going to continue on the left side of the machine here. You notice up there, there's sensors all over the unit. With the tier,
This is a tier 2.
Tier 2 engines, and later they're all electronic, as you know. Notice that there's really nowhere for you to get up there and try to adjust anything. They're all integrated electronically. They're not mechanical whatsoever, so they run off of sensors. And a lot of the faults and things that we get on them are from a sensor. So, and they do enunciate, and that's how we can tell when things are going on. And a lot of times, you may be able to tell by looking at the panel, and we'll get to that, or you may not be able to tell, and that's where one of the technicians will have to come out, hook up the ET, and find out what's wrong with the engine. So just so you know, like I'm looking up here and I see the pressure sensors that are on the fuel filters. You'll see sensors all over. You have temperature sensors, you have pressure sensors, and they all send signals to the control panel. On this side, you can see these couple of tubes coming off the valve covers. That's your blow-by. That's been routed to the front so that we don't send smoke and oil into the engine compartment. It gets caught into the radiator and clogs it up. Also on this side, you have your block heater. This is actually a block heater with a little pump on it, so that's kind of helps that out, pumping that warm fluid around. And Eddie, I'm not sure where it was set up, 100 to 120. About 140. Okay, so 140 max on it. Oh, 104. Okay, so 100 to, so range probably 100 to 120, somewhere in that range, around 104 nominal. And that's, you know, you guys know on a jacket water heater, the reason why we want to heat it even in this environment, we like to have a warm start because the engine's called upon to run right away. And the block heater keeps that fluid warm around the block. It also kind of keeps the pan warm around the engine, kind of keeps the oil a little warmer than it would normally be, and it helps it to start. Also on this side, you'll see a stop button, emergency stop, and also you have an emergency stop over here on the outside. Only the guy that's around the unit knows if it needs an emergency stop, but if you see fire, smoke, fluid running out, or anything of that nature, that'll give you a quick kill on the engine. Also on this side, we've got if you notice this electrical box back on the side of the engine, that's where our electronics run through and give us all the battery voltages out on the engine, including the alternator and our brain box, which is up here on the front. That's our engine control module. And instead of all that running through like one J box or whatever, now it's on the side. It does have breakers, and I think we talked to Tom about it earlier. If any of those get shut off, like when you're walking around a machine, those parts will not work. So it's critical for those to always be in the up position so that everything's engaged. Also, you've got the key start over here, which is in the on position now. If you're doing maintenance or whatever, you can kill the machine there, pull that key out. That way you don't have to disconnect the batteries, but you can kill it there. Okay, we're going to move back to the control panel. Control panel, we got the high fuel level is enunciated, which is going to go ahead and burn down and get to the level that light will go out. Basically, this is what we call a local remote enunciator, and I want to talk about some of these items here at the top, especially emergency stop is what we call a shutdown. If that's engaged, the engine's not going to start, and you're going to get a red light over here. Over crank, when the engine's called upon to start, it's going to get a start signal. It's going to go through 3 cranks. It'll be a crank and a rest, a crank and a rest, and a crank. And if it doesn't start on the 3rd try, it's going to go into over crank so that we don't continue to try to start it and burn up the batteries and burn the 24-volt system up. Low coolant temperature is an alarm. If the coolant temperature drops below 70 degrees, we're going to get a low coolant temp alarm, and that means that probably a couple of things: either the jacket water has quit working, or the breaker going to the jacket water heater has been tripped for some reason. We got to figure out what that problem is. Once you get it back online, it'll heat the water up and that light will go back off. High coolant temperature is a shutdown. I think it's about 222 on these. You're gonna, if for some reason we were compromised enough and the temperature kept rising in the system, you know, perfect storm, high load, radiator compromised because it's clogged up, you know, hot day, let's say, you may be approaching that, and it will shut down so we don't kill the engine, burn the engine up. Also, low oil pressure. Low oil pressure would be caused, you know, obviously we never want to see it, but a bottom end failure would cause that, obviously oil pump failure, and or you could have actual low oil in the sump that would not allow you to have full pressure, and that might give you a low oil pressure shutdown. And then overspeed, you get about a 10% overspeed on it, past 1800. If it continues to rise, we've lost governor control. It'll continue to go up until it hits that threshold, and it'll shut down for overspeed. So those are safeties built into the system, and then also we have the low coolant level as well. The rest of them, again, we got high fuel level, which we know works because it's on right now. Control switch not in auto. Eddie, am I going to hurt anything? No.
If you start it, it's going to start.
Yeah, no, but I can go ahead and I'm going to show you what a not in auto looks like. You put it in stop like that. I get that. I don't like that noise, so what I normally do, the first thing I do when I hear an alarm, I look and see what the alarm is, and I don't want to acknowledge the alarm because then I can think. I don't think too well with that buzz going in my ear, so now I look and I go, oh, control switch not in auto, what am I going to do? Well, in this case, and you notice, see it's blinking up there? This is basically red on this side, amber on this side, amber on this side, red on that side. Right now it's blinking because it's still control switch, not an auto. Even though I acknowledge it, I still got to clear the condition. Okay, now that went out, but I still got this. Just push the bell, and it should go out. The light.
It's not going to go out, Mitch. You got a high fuel level on.
That's right. So Eddie's reminding me that's going to stay on until that fuel level goes down, but normally it would have went out when I pushed that button. High battery voltage, low battery voltage, battery charger, AC failure. Obviously those are all connected to batteries. They're going to be alarms that you'll get. Fuel tank leak, that's what I asked Nathan about, rupture basin, we call it. There's outside. E-stop and generator circuit breaker status. And does that go red or?
Yes.
Okay, that'll go red when the generator breaker is closed. So right now, the position we're in, generator breaker's open, okay? All right, what I'm gonna do now is take you through a simple exercise. I think we'll have Mr. Pelly do this since he's the expert. What I'm gonna do is, even though we already got a fault and we know what that is, I want to see if I can find that for me. Okay, notice I just pushed this up key until I got to event logs. And I'm going to see if we can see. We got two genset controls. External tank, high fuel level warning present. That actually tells us what's going on with that. And then I push the down key. And then generator breaker open in this case is a fault, or it's not really a fault, but it shows up as an enunciation. It's an event and it's present. Okay, so we got two things present right now. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to get back out of here, and I am going to go ahead and go through a E-stop, which is the easiest one for me to demonstrate. Push the E-stop. Notice we got a red blinking and we got an E-stop over here. And again, what I like to do is stop the noise first. So I get down here, stop the noise. I can look and see now. We got something going on. It says event logs. So I get in here by pushing the in key. And it says I got a genset control, 4 actives. Okay, it says emergency stop switch activated. Okay, so what do I do to get rid of the emergency stop? Well, what I've got to do is get this. The first thing I would do is put it in stop, because that's the only way I'm going to be able to clear anything. So I put it in stop. Got to get that fine noise again. Got to clear that. Then what I'm going to do is clear this, which is a little bit difficult when it's in this position, but you got to, there you go. All right, and then what I do is push this button, okay? And it says reset all events. So I'm going to push that. I got rid of the red. Now the only thing I got going is we're not in auto. Put it back in auto. And the only one I got still is the high fuel. So I'm going to go ahead and take it out there, and we'll let Mr. Pelly. You're confident?
I'm confident.
All right. You ready? Yeah. Okay. Gary's going to do the same thing I did.
Get rid of this noise. We're gonna. Home out in auto.
So we don't spend
You got to stop it. We got to move your switch. Here, we got to do the switch. Open the switch back up. Stop switch.
You just need to pull it out.
Push the bell. Okay, so yeah, now it tells us inactive. Now, what I want to do is, again, that's just clearing a fault. If we had any other fault, as long as we get to where we clear it, we can clear it. If we don't have the condition erased, it won't clear. So let's say it was high temperature for some reason. If you figured out what was causing it, there's a big piece of cardboard or something in front of the radiator. You got that out of the way. Now the engine's going to cool down. You can restart it, and once the temperature gets down below the threshold, it'll come back up, and you can clear that fault. Basically, these two annunciator controls here, that's the engine control, and this is the generator control. Engine control button shows us 0 psi oil pressure right now. We start the engine, it'll be up around probably 80 or 90 psi, drop down when we're under load. Water temperature right now 111 degrees, so we know the block heater's working, although on a day like this it'll probably show 111 just from the engine. 25.3 volts on the NiCads. Basically the NiCad batteries are in the cabinet here, and Eddie's going to go ahead and do that part when we get to it, but the NiCad's charged at a little higher rate, and so we're going to see a little higher voltage here. RPM 1800, and it's showing 0 now because we're not running. And this particular panel, 2 hours on it, and it shows stopped. On the other side, generator data. It'll show us the average voltage, the leg-to-leg amperage, and for our purposes this morning, we're not going to transfer, but that would show you your amperage. It'll show 60 hertz when it's running. It'll show the power factor, and it'll show the total kW, what your percent kW is. And again, I don't know that we've had everything running that's going to run and on the unit. I mean, it came pretty close, I imagine, but I don't know if anybody recorded those. So I really don't know what that number is. It's going to be an interesting number once we figure out everything's operational on an actual outage. So again, you'll be able to see that percentage there, and then based on the little chart you have there, we should be able to figure out what kind of fuel consumption. Also, if you scroll down, you can scroll that all the way down to get leg-to-leg on voltage amps, total kW, k-bars, kilowatt hours. That'll total your kilowatt hours, and it'll also total your engine hours, and those are non-resettable. And average leg-to-leg, excitation voltage, and once you go too far, it'll tell you no more information available. On this side, on the engine side, it'll give you the same thing we talked about in longhand: oil pressure, coolant temp, engine speed, battery voltage, engine hours. It'll give you how many hours until you have to do service, and that's just, they put those in there, it's not a problem. It'll say how many cranks of the engine, how many starts of the engine. That'll give you your exhaust temperatures left and right, intake manifold temperature, oil temperature, fuel PSI, crankcase PSI, boost PSI, oil and fuel filter restriction, air filter restriction. That'll tell you how many gallons of fuel you consume. It's way too much information to me, guys. It lost me after we got past the first 5 items. Actually, that'll tell you how many gallons per hour you're doing. If it runs out of fuel, we're going to blame Gary. No more information available. So again, once you get to the end of that scroll, got a lot of good information in there if you're keeping track, that's for sure. Push that, get you back to normal. Now, what I want to do is take you through what I think is a normal startup procedure, and since it's for training purposes, we should probably do this properly, but we want somebody, whoever that appointed guy to be, to check the oil level. We can do it on here. Check the coolant level. Look and record the battery voltage. Check the fuel. And then we're going to go ahead and start the engine. We're going to run it from here and then make a few recordings. But this is just my simple fuel startup sheet. You guys have a more complex one, I'm sure, but let's do that at least before we start the engine. I want to make sure, and I know you want to make sure, that we do due diligence to our piece of equipment and we check things out before we start it, right? So Gary's going to go around, get the numbers, and then we'll go ahead and fire it up.
Are you guys going to change, right now you have it so much equipment runs when you're on emergency generator. Are you guys going to up that now as you can, or
We're not.
it's going to stay like this?
It's optimal right now.
Somebody did a calculation where it's going to go half load.
It's about 1
I
day.
haven't said anything that's been controversial yet.
So you should be able to run, what, 15 hours?
Never have to be down 15 hours.
Randy, when we cycled
We'll go
the
ahead
system,
and
that's
run
all
it.
it pulls
Well,
in
you
the
want to
bay.
do the battery stuff
Yeah,
first.
pulled less than that actually.
Yeah, we'll do the battery breaker and then we'll start. We'll let Gary do the walk first.
This is an ICAD battery set that supplies the battery voltage for the DC controls, the 24 volt DC control for the engine generator package. And also through a converter up here, converts 24 volts to 48 volts DC for switchgear control power. So the battery pack serves a double duty, not only to start the unit, but it also controls the switchgear, so it's a pretty important component in this whole setup. This charger here is for the NiCads. It's set to automatically keep the NiCads at a certain level. If so inclined, you can go into a fast boost rate. If you see this not working, but it is automatic, it will sense and boost them periodically. It's in a maintain level now. One of the status lights you can look at to verify if you're sending 48 volts to your switchgear is there's a little green light up here. There is status lights that will tell you if there's any fault indications up here. There are some fuses up here for the switchgear. There's fuses for this converter. They're all located on this side of the panel. You guys have the maintenance book on this. NiCads are pretty maintenance friendly. The reason why I believe they respect is they don't require a whole lot of maintenance. So I would do a visual, just make sure that you don't have corrosion showing, monthly, whatever your normal inspection is. Make sure the water levels that you can see that they're all, they're visual. You can see them if you see one going down. That's about it. Follow the maintenance recommendations for that manufacturer in your handouts, because I'm not too sure on exact maintenance intervals on those. But that's what these will do. So again, that's a pretty important part of your system. And I don't know if it was touched on, but the lights in the container, you have a set of DC lights, fluorescent lights, and you have a set of AC. A set of the bulbs, I believe the top ones are for DC and the bottom ones are for AC. I could get that wrong, but the timer switches are as you come in the door there. They're on timers, so they'll shut off automatically. One thing if you want to look at, Nathan, swap around to that panel. There's breakers.
Oops, you're good.
AC breakers in here that control the lights, the battery charger, the louvers in the back. The generator space heater. The generator space heater right now is shut off because of, it's being so warm. You really don't need it. So in the wintertime, I would make it practice just turn it on in the fall when the temperatures start getting from morning to night, dusk to dawn. They start changing a lot.
There's no thermostat on that?
There's no thermostat on it, no. So it's on all the time. It gets really hot. It's not on it. So just turn it on in the summertime and let her go. You could leave it on all the time. It just gets really hot. It doesn't hurt anything. It just gets hot. So that's it for this as far as in here.
All right, just so we're clear about the checklist and so on, when you come out and run the engine, you're going to do a checklist, and then that's also part of your AQMD records. We're required by AQMD, you're required as the owner of the equipment to keep track of any time you run it. You want to record those hours. like for today, Gary's going to write down, test or monthly test or however you decide to call that. But that way you log your hours so that when the